Before starting my business, there were two things that held me back. The first thing was comfortability. I was stuck in a job, I was comfortable, I was receiving a salary, and it was all going fine, but I knew that there was something bigger that I wanted. And the second thing was a lack of information. I simply didn't know how to start. I didn't know where to start. So the combination of those two things kept me in my role for way longer than I should have been. And now that I've been able to transition and build a business and then build multiple brands since and scale to 6 figures a year, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice not demonstrating or not showing you my story so you could potentially apply this to yourself. So in this video, what I'm going to be walking through is my founder story, everything that I used to think when I was younger, the skills that I knew I had to obtain, and how I took those skills and applied it to business. So going back to when I was younger, I always knew that I wanted to start a business. I remember when I was very, very young, we're talking less than 10 years old, I used to build objects out of paper and sellotape, and I'd always try and create something that didn't exist. So imagine, right, you've got a ball of paper or strips of paper, and then you've got sellotape and scissors. Those are the only 3 objects that you've got, and you're trying to create something that doesn't exist. It was a nightmare. I remember I tried to create like a crane out of paper and sellotape, something that could lift things up. And obviously, thinking with a more mature business mindset now, I understand that you need to create something that provides value. But back then, I was always thinking, how can I create something that didn't exist? The reason I thought that is because from when I was younger, I had the mindset that I wanted to be an inventor. It was crazy. But when you think about like Thomas Edison and things about the light bulb didn't exist until he created it. So in my mind, I'm thinking, fucking hell, I need to find something that doesn't exist so I can create that. And obviously in the modern world, you've got things like apps that you can build that don't necessarily exist. But the reality is, in business, you kind of want to find something that's worked. It makes it a lot easier from a market research perspective because something's been validated already. But going back to it anyway, I always wanted to be an inventor, so I always had that creative energy in me. I always wanted to do something that went against the grain. I never wanted to follow the conventions and the norms. Whenever people used to ask me, like teachers and my parents, they used to ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I didn't think fireman. I didn't think police officer. I didn't think any of this stuff. I wanted to be an inventor. I wanted to create something new. So I knew from at a very, very early age, my mind was wired in that way. But unfortunately, the education system doesn't really nurture that. They focus on teaching you skills that allow you to be a good worker. They teach you how to memorize things. They don't teach you transferable skills that you can use to create freedom. And that's why the school system is built to keep you trapped, right? And personally, I wouldn't take my children to school. I want to homeschool them or bring in tutors and do that sort of stuff to show them that you learn through projects, you learn through creativity, you learn through having an idea and executing on it. So when I was young, the school system didn't nurture my creative thinking, and it's why I was quite rebellious in school. So from my memory, every single school I went to, I had some problems. It was either I would end up in the head teacher's office all the time, or I would get excluded from secondary school a few times in my earlier years. But even before then, I was always in trouble. The teachers, the head teachers, the deputy heads, they knew me as someone who was a troublemaker. But I was never a troublemaker. I was just rebellious because I didn't want to conform to the structure that the school was providing. And even at a young age, it's not something that I quite remembered. I mean, I remembered it, but it wasn't something that I really paid attention to. I always just thought, maybe I am just naughty. Maybe I am just a bad person. And that's how I thought when I was younger. But thinking back, I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't naughty. I was just rebelling against a system that didn't nurture the way that I thought. And it's still the case to this day. The school system hasn't really changed in, hundreds of years. And it's a shame because a lot of young people who have that creative mind aren't being nurtured. But thankfully, as they get older, that creativity starts to shine a little bit more. But if we was able to nurture children from a younger age, I feel like everyone would benefit a lot more, and more young people would be able to create from an early age and start to build lives that they actually love and not submit to a life that they're conformed to based on societal norms and going into a 9-to-5 and the rat race and all of that sort of stuff. So the school system needs to change first and foremost. But when I was in school, I always thought like I wanted more, but that thought was kind of pushed to the side, to be honest. And my parents were very education focused. They wanted us to do well. I have an older brother and a younger sister. So as siblings, they all wanted us to do really well. None of my parents went to university. So for us, it was an important thing. They said, you need to get an education. You need to go to university. And then once you've left university, you can do what you want, because they believed that so long as you're taught and you've got a good education, then you can do everything. And I'm so grateful for that, because I did learn a lot going through education, but I mainly learned what I didn't want. And yes, I guess arguably it made me a more intelligent person, having to do like revision when I was younger. I remember staying up. I was at my computer and my brother had some of his friends around and they were playing upstairs and around the house, and I really wanted to get involved. Like, it was my older brother, 2 years older than me. I really wanted to get involved, but I couldn't leave the computer until I'd finished my maths homework. So my mom was like watching me like a hawk, making sure I finished. And in the moment I finished my homework, everyone had left. So I missed out on the fun. So moments like that I'm grateful for, because it did encourage me to learn. And, you know, I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my parents for teaching us that education is important. However, I just don't feel like the educational system is important. Education is important. Knowledge is important. Education and knowledge is power, but it just depends where you're focusing that knowledge, right? If it's on Pythagoras theorem, it don't really matter. But if it's on skills like, you know, taxes and managing your investments and things like that, that's when it becomes more important. But anyway, I'm going a bit off topic. So in school, my parents were very, very focused on making sure that me and my siblings all got a very good education. And then after that, it was kind of like, do whatever you want. So I felt a little bit like I'd wasted quite a bit of time, because I did the education, I did college, I did 4 years at university. First year I did media studies because I wanted to be a bit more creative. But then my course was mixed with Spanish. I'm not good at learning languages, and I didn't even know it had Spanish in there when I applied. I was just thinking media, let me just do it. So I ended up leaving that course and then starting another course in English at the same University of Nottingham. So I ended up doing 4 years there, and anyone who's been to university understands that when you've got maintenance loans, you've got student finances and all that sort of stuff, you end up in a decent amount of debt afterwards. So I'm probably in like 70, 80K's worth of debt. And that's it in the back, right? I'm not worried about that right now, but the debt does pile up. So you kind of commit to not only spending a lot of money, but you spend a lot of your time. And those 4 years between the age of, for me, it was 19, I'm September, so I was a bit older. From 19 to 20, 21, 22, 19 to 23. Those years are vital. Those years are where you can really execute on your creativity. So for me, I feel like I missed my early 20s because I was focused on studying. And then we had COVID. So it just kind of messed things around a lot. And in those early 20s is really where you want to be executing on ideas, building, testing, because you've got no responsibilities. You can just fail until you find something that works. So for me, university, school, education played a massive role in me developing knowledge, but at the same time, I feel like it wasted a bit of time. But when I left university, I was kind of in that stage of, what now? Because my parents only wanted me to get the education. They were like, you do what you want after. But what I wanted was to build a business. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to do something that wasn't a grad job, something that you come out to uni, you've got your degree, you show it to someone, they hire you. I didn't want to do any of that. So I was a bit lost. I didn't really know where to go. But then one of my good friends, Ollie, he left the university the year before me because he'd done 3 years there. And he went into a sales role at a SaaS company. And he came back to me and was like, look, Jordan, just get a job in sales because they pay well. And it's true. Sales do pay well, especially when you're on commissions as well. So I started applying to sales jobs. And within 2 weeks, I landed a job at a SaaS company called How Now. It was a learning and development tech company. And I'm so grateful for the experience there and the experience working in the SaaS space, because it developed a love for software for me. For me, I joined a startup, so I started to understand what it looks like in a small business. So I was able to see what the founders were doing. I was able to see all of the different departments, marketing, customer success, sales. So I knew what it takes to grow a business. I knew what the team looked like. I knew what team you needed to have a business at the level that they were operating at. And also it built a love for software, because I am quite a tech geek in a way. Like even now with Sales Growth Growth Club. Anything to do with operations, back end, that's all my focus. Anything to do with software. I built one software already and I'm currently working on a few more. It is a passion for me, and that passion was birthed when I was working at How Now, and it continued to grow during my time working in sales in the SaaS space. So I joined that company anyway. I was there for about 2 years and then I left because another company headhunted me. They were much larger SaaS company, but they were offering me a bigger salary. So I was on about 40k plus commission. So it all worked out about 60k on target earnings for the year. At that stage, I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is really good. But what that does is it creates comfort. So I was working that job thinking, oh, I'm not even thinking about anything else now. All I'm doing is making cold calls, sending emails, making sales, and they're giving me 60k a year. So to me, that was amazing. And it did create discomfort. So I was working there for a bit anyway, and I was really learning sales. And I was, more than anything, I was learning the sales department. I wasn't just focusing on my sales as a skill set, because that's one thing, right? Knowing how to sell is learning how to communicate, asking the right questions, all of that sort of stuff. That's one thing. But then understanding the process that it takes to bring in attention or bring in leads or prospects, and then take them through a journey and close them as a client, and then continue to build that relationship. That is business. Sales is business. Sales and marketing is business. The only other thing you need is the offer or the business or the product, and then like the service delivery, customer success, that sort of thing. But sales and marketing, in my experience working at SaaS companies, was the main driver of business. So it really made me think, and I was able to immerse myself into that culture, into that environment, and it really helped me to develop a real good understanding of business. Because even before I was working, as much as I knew I wanted to start a business, I had no clue how to. I'd had no business experience. I was just someone who knew how to sell, and I was creative. So I wanted to do something. And even now I have ideas, I have thoughts, and I turn that into action. And I always had those ideas before, but I just never had the ability to create something. That was the journey for me. I started to learn when I was in the SaaS space, but then I got fired. Naturally, things happen in life, right? People get fired. It is what it is. But I lost my job due to a combination of things. A, me not doing enough work. B, personal issues getting into the place. And then C, my mind just wasn't really in it. I kind of wanted to do something else. I even remember when I was on the floor in the office, big office, sales tables everywhere. And I was about to start taking cold calls, but I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues and I started talking about business ideas. I wanted to do drop shipping. So I was thinking about creating a jewelry brand. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Blah, 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 blah. We was talking anyway. And that made me think, like, my mind was never in the sales role. I was always thinking about creating something else. So looking back in hindsight, I'm so grateful that I got fired. I'm so grateful that I lost my job, because if I didn't, I still would have been comfortable, right? Maybe not now, but it forced me out of my comfort zone. And I think the universe did that for a reason. I think the universe forced me out of my comfort zone because it knew I was destined for more. And I wasn't going to leave that comfort zone because, again, I'm getting paid, right? I'm able to take trips. I'm going on holidays. I'm going out for meals. I'm living my best life. I wasn't paying rent. I was living at home with my family. Life was great, but I was comfortable. And comfort is the thief of development, right? You need to break free from your comfort zone in order to achieve greatness. So I'm thankful that I got fired because it forced me out of that comfort zone. And the moment I lost my job there, I had no reason to go back. I said to myself, I'm not going into another SaaS company. I've learned everything I've needed to learn there. I'm not going to do the exact same role that I've been doing again for another year before they then promote me into an account exec. It just didn't make sense for me. So I took a bit more of an alternative path, one that I had no clue about, but it was a risk. And in business, it's all about taking risks. So I was on LinkedIn and I came across Santino. Santino, for all of those who don't know, is a sales trainer. If anyone here is looking to get high ticket sales training, Santino is the man. Drop me a note. I'll leave his details in the comments under this anyway, but drop me a private message if you're looking to get sales training. I'll make an introduction to Santino. He's the GOAT. But I came across Santino on LinkedIn and he was hiring for an account executive. Now, in my terms, for those who don't know, in the SaaS world, you've got SDRs, so sales development representatives, or business development representatives, which is a BDR. And then you've got AEs, which are account executives. So in my world, I've experienced SDR. I wanted to be an AE. So I was still looking for sales sales jobs. I wasn't quite ready to start a business yet. Well, I didn't think I was ready to start a business yet because my world of business was SaaS companies. And I was like, well, I'm not a technical person in a sense of I don't know how to write code. So how am I going to create a software? And I was looking at big companies. It just felt overwhelming for me. So I was looking for another sales job, but I wasn't looking in software. I was looking at something else. So Santino was hiring for an account executive, but I later found out that it was a closer. So he just positioned it differently on LinkedIn because he knows the audience on LinkedIn, which is actually quite smart. So I started working with Santino under D. Ludlow 5D program, which is a program where they help people to buy and sell businesses. So it's mergers and acquisitions. You're investing in businesses. And his whole motto was don't invest in property, buy a business because you're going to be able to generate more rev from it. And it was great, right? It was a really, really, really good experience. I kind of dove into a different world of sales because closing is very different to cold calling, right? And I'd never done any closer training before. I kind of just got stuck in and figured it all out. And I wasn't the best closer, but I got good and I started making sales. And after a few rocky months, because it was commission only, after a few rocky months, I started to make a decent amount of money, but I never really matched my salary from when I was in the corporate space. Because when you think about it, 60k salary, when you're closing, you need to be making like 3k a month. I did get there a few times, but it wasn't super consistent. And then there were some worrying times, etc., etc. But what working in high ticket sales taught me was I've just seen sales and the infrastructure of sales from massive SaaS companies, right? And startups. But Seismic was a lot bigger than HowNow. Seismic was the second company. HowNow was about 40 people when I was there. Seismic was about 1,500 across the US and the UK and in Germany as well. And in Australia. But so Seismic were a big company, and I saw how the sales process looked at those massive organizations, and I compared it with how it looked at in the high ticket space. And there were a lot of similarities, differences, but also a lot of similarities. And I started to feed in the knowledge that I had from working in SaaS companies into high ticket businesses. And we started to see some incredible growth. And it really made me start to think. And I looked at Santino because Santino was managing the team. I looked at Santino and I said, I could do what you're doing. And then it clicked for me. I'm like, well, maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe the universe fired me from my job and drove me into Santino's direction to introduce me to a new world of business. And now we're starting to see the high ticket business space really blow up. And this was only about 2 years ago when I was introduced to Santino. So we're seeing the space really start to develop now. But back then, I had no idea what high ticket sales was, what these high ticket businesses were doing. I had no clue. Little did I know I actually invested into one because I spent £2,000 on a drop shipping course about a year before I met Santino. So I knew it was happening, but I didn't really understand it. And it wasn't something that I understood enough to start a business in until working with 5D. So I looked at what Santino was doing and I said, I can do this, right? I've got knowledge. I understand, I understand business, I understand sales, I understand management. Why can't I do what you're doing? I was at 5D for about 9 months and eventually left. And what I ended up doing after was exactly what Santino did, right? So I started by building an agency. Now, this was my first business. It was scary. It was worrying. I was like, oh, what am I going to do here? Like I've got no money. I had a bit of money in my savings that I stacked up from working in corporate and all of that sort of stuff. I'm quite good at putting money away and investing it. But so it did start to stack up. I had some pretty decent returns. So I had enough money to fall back on. And thankfully my missus as well, she was really helpful. She has a business herself and she was really, really supportive financially during that period. So I ended up starting this business. It was a massive risk, but it was an agency. So what I did, which is quite funny because it's like a full circle moment now. But what I did was I started building sales teams for solopreneurs. So businesses that were, or people that were running like coaching programs or something like that didn't have the firepower to consistently bring on clients. So I noticed what Santino was doing with D. D had a massive personal brand. He had a lot more going on there. I was kind of targeting the people that were a lot smaller. And in doing that, I actually invested about £3,500 into myself to develop the skills. There was a few people on social media who were doing the same thing. So I invested into them to help me get there. And I ended up starting this business and I felt a massive weight off my chest. It felt incredible. I felt like my life finally had purpose. And bear in mind, in this business, I made fuck all. I probably made on average about $1,000 a month. And that wasn't even in the beginning. Like in the beginning, for the first like 3 months, I made zero, maybe like £500 here and there scattered. And then it started to get more consistent. I was making about 1,000 a month. And then it was going well, but I felt fulfilled. Even with that little money, I felt fulfilled because I knew that since a kid, this is what I wanted. I wanted my own business. I wanted to be in control of my income. So the moment I finally pulled the trigger, I felt fulfilled. Now, that didn't mean that I was in, right? I knew like everything that's followed. I mean, this was when I started that first company, it was about 2 years ago now. So yeah, I must have worked for 5D about 3 years ago. So timelines are slightly off a little bit. But about 2 years ago, I started my first business. And that whole year, I was broke as a joke, right? And you know how they say there's a difference between being poor and being broke? Poor is a mindset, broke is a financial situation. I was never poor. I've never been poor, but I was broke. I was broke as it gets. And I just wasn't making money. And this is what happens in business, right? You start something, have financial backing for at least 6 months before you start a business. So you can manage your expenses. But I started anyway and I kept at it. I just kept plugging away because I knew that now I'm in this place where I feel this fulfilled. I'm not going back to what I was doing. And then on that journey, I met my business partner now, Callum. So he was actually one of my clients on my first agency. I was going to build a sales team for him. And then we kind of just came together and built this business together, which is now Sales Growth Club. As you can see from the t-shirt, this is our logo. We built Sales Growth Club together and we achieved above 6 figures in our first year. So it was quite successful. Obviously, there's a lot more that we want to achieve with Sales Growth Club, but we've done it, right? We've proved that we can make this work and it's a successful business. So now I'm thinking in hindsight about everything that went into making that happen, but it was an amazing journey and it's going to continue from here. I still feel like I'm at the beginning and I've been in business for 2 years now. I still feel like I'm at the very beginning. There's so much more that I need to learn. I need to develop my skill sets. There's more I need to do from a management side of things. There's more offers I want to create. There's more products I want to create. There's so much more. But once you start to awaken that creative energy. You start to realize that you can do it. So now every idea is actually powerful. Before you start a business, whenever you have a business idea, it always feels like something that's never going to come to fruition. You have the idea, but you never execute on it. But the moment you actually do it, every single idea feels like it could be worth £1 million. For me now, I could wake up and have an idea. I'll always put it in my notes. And then I'll always do the market research because it's so easy now. We've got AI. We've got everything in our arsenal to create something very quickly. Ad creatives, UGC creators. We've got AI. We can do absolutely everything. So every idea feels like something you can take to market very easily now. So in my mindset, all I do now as a founder is look for problems or look for areas where I can have an impact on the market. And the moment you start thinking like that, you're unstoppable. So to give you an overall understanding of my story, I started always wanting to do this. I always wanted to create freedom, but I had no idea. And it took a few bumps, a few roadblocks, a few, being fired, working for different people, understanding different models, taking risks. It took a lot of that for me to be in the position that I'm in now, but it was so worth it. And if I was to go back, I would do it all over again. So for anyone who was in the same place as me, who wanted something, who's creative, who wants to create something, who doesn't want to follow the norm, just do it. And I know that's so hard. I know it's so difficult to just say, just do it. But in fact, I'm going to make it easier for you. Learn from someone who's done it first. Find someone who's currently doing it. Join their team. Learn from them. Build with them. Go into a startup. If you want to move into the online space, find someone who's got a business in the high ticket space already and join their team. Sell for them. Join their customer success team. Do something within that business and just absorb everything. Learn it all. Find out what they've done really well. Find out what they've not done so well, but absorb absolutely everything. And then when you're ready, when you've got enough information, take action. Save up enough money so you've got at least 6 months worth of cash or at least 3 months worth, just so you can cover yourself so you're never stressed about making money. Because when you start a business, the last thing you want to be doing is being stressed about the money, because you want to be able to focus on the service, because that's how you actually make the money. The moment you're stressed about money, it's not going to work. You're going to operate from a place of lack, which is going to drive money away. And it's exactly why my first business failed. I was too focused focused on the money. You want to be focused on providing an amazing service for your people, for your clients, and that's how you make the money. So make sure you've got enough money stacked up and then just do it. Just go all in. Work on, find the market, create the offer, work on the sales, build, and do not give up. And I guarantee you, from the moment you've done it to a year later, you're going to be in a much better place. And I can also guarantee the moment you've started, 3 months later, you're going to feel more fulfilled than you've ever done before. So I hope this has been helpful. This has just been my journey. I will be interviewing, documenting, having conversations with other people who have gone on a similar journey or who have experienced building something, but in a completely different way, just so everyone's got a real good understanding of how they can make it happen for themselves. But regardless, I really hope this has been helpful. I hope this inspires a lot of you to take action and just create and just go for it. And if any of you have any questions at all or need any guidance, you can always get access to me on Instagram. Just send me a DM, Growth by Jordan. Let me know how you found this video. Let me know what more content you want to see from me, and go out and kill it. But yeah, peace.